The first warning. It was an ordinary morning on Earth, or at least it seemed like one. The sun rose over the cities, people went about their daily routines, and the world appeared calm. But far beyond the atmosphere, something was changing. A signal was sent, a message that would shake the very foundation of humanity's place in the universe. On the edge of Earth's orbit, a vast and ancient fleet of ships appeared. These weren't just any ships. They were part of the Galactic Empire, a powerful force that controlled many worlds across the stars. They had arrived to demand tribute from Earth, but Earth wasn't ready to give in. In fact, the human leaders were about to send a message that would surprise the galaxy. In the control room of Earth's Space Command Center, Admiral Sarah Blake watched the incoming ships on the radar. She wasn't sure what to make of it. The ships were massive, much larger than anything Earth had ever seen. Their weapons were more advanced than anything humanity had created. For a moment, she felt a wave of fear, but she quickly pushed it aside. This was no time for fear. "We've received a transmission," an officer called out from across the room. "It's from the Galactic Empire." Admiral Blake turned to face the officer, her expression hardening. The Galactic Empire was known for their cruelty and arrogance. They had conquered countless planets, demanding tribute from each one. Earth had heard the rumors, but no one ever believed it could happen to them. Now, it seemed like the rumors were true. The officer handed her a screen. Blake's eyes scanned the message. It was simple, direct, and cold. Earth is required to submit a tribute to the Galactic Empire. Failure to comply will result in immediate action. You have 72 hours to respond. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. Tribute. What could they possibly want from Earth? Earth wasn't rich in resources like other planets. They didn't have the advanced technology the Empire was used to. So what could they possibly offer? Blake knew this was more than just a simple request. The Galactic Empire didn't ask for things. They demanded them. And if Earth didn't comply, it would mean the end. The entire world could be destroyed in an instant. She stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of the decision. Earth had never been a military power. Humans had always been peaceful, focused on science, exploration, and knowledge. But this wasn't about peace anymore. This was about survival. And Admiral Blake knew what she had to do. She turned to her team. "Prepare a response. I want to make it clear that Earth will not bow to anyone, not even the Galactic Empire. We will not be intimidated." The room went silent. Every officer knew what this meant. The Empire's ships were already in range, and their weapons could destroy entire cities with one blast. It wasn't just a threat, it was a warning. But Admiral Blake wasn't about to let fear take over. Earth had one thing the Empire didn't expect: unity. Back on Earth, people were just starting to hear the news. Across the globe, the government scrambled to make decisions. The leaders of Earth had to speak with one voice. The world had to be united, no matter how difficult the challenge ahead seemed. At the United Nations, world leaders gathered in a special meeting, watching the screens that displayed the Empire's ships looming over Earth. The atmosphere was tense, filled with anxiety and fear, but also determination. Earth's future was at stake. The UN Secretary-General stood before the assembly, his voice steady but firm. "The Galactic Empire has made its demands. They want tribute. They want us to submit. But we will not. Humanity has faced great challenges before, and we have always found a way to overcome them. Now we must stand together. We must send a message to the galaxy. We will not be bullied." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. The leaders of Earth knew this was the only way forward. They couldn't back down. If they did, humanity's spirit would be broken forever. They couldn't let the Empire think they were weak. With that, Earth sent its response. The message was brief but clear. "We will not submit. Stay away from Earth, or face the consequences." The message was broadcast across the galaxy, reaching the Empire's fleet. It was bold, defiant, and it sent a clear signal. Humanity wasn't afraid. The galaxy had underestimated Earth for too long, but now the Empire would see what humans were truly capable of. As soon as the message was sent, a wave of silence seemed to fall over Earth. People everywhere were waiting. Would the Empire strike? Would Earth be destroyed in an instant? Admiral Blake stood before the view of the fleet in the control room. She knew they had just made an enemy of the most powerful force in the galaxy, but she also knew that Earth had nothing to lose. The Empire might have the firepower, but Earth had something far more dangerous: determination. The days ahead would be filled with uncertainty, but for the first time in history, Earth had taken a stand. And in that moment, humanity had sent its first, and perhaps final, warning: the galactic response. The message had been sent. Earth had made its stand. But as the seconds ticked by, the question remained: would the Galactic Empire respond? The entire world watched, holding its breath. For the first time in human history, Earth was on the brink of something larger than itself. In the control room of the Earth Defense Command, Admiral Sarah Blake stared at the screens, her eyes unblinking. The transmission from Earth had been sent, but so far, there was nothing from the Empire. No immediate retaliation. No words, no actions. Only silence. It felt like an eternity. Every moment stretched longer than the last. But Admiral Blake knew one thing for sure: the silence would not last forever. The Empire was not known for waiting patiently. Back at the United Nations, the world's leaders were gathered once again. The room was filled with tense faces, the weight of their earlier decision hanging heavy in the air. The first warning had been sent, but now, the next step was unclear. Earth had never faced a threat like this before. What if they had made a mistake? What if the Empire's wrath was far greater than they had anticipated? Suddenly, the silence was broken. "Admiral Blake," a voice crackled through the intercom. "We've received a response from the Galactic Empire. You need to see this." Blake's heart raced as she turned to the screen, watching as the message appeared in bold letters. The response was not one of words, but of actions. The Empire had sent a fleet of their own, huge warships that dwarfed anything Earth had ever seen. These ships were positioned right at the edge of Earth's orbit. They didn't move closer, but their presence alone was enough to send a chill through Blake's spine. The message was clear. The Empire wasn't here to negotiate. One ship, in particular, stood out among the rest. It was massive, larger than any of the others, and it was clearly the command vessel. As Blake observed, the ship's communication system activated, and a holographic figure appeared before her. The figure was imposing, dressed in dark armor, with a face obscured by a helmet. The voice that followed was cold, commanding, and unmistakably full of power. "Earth," the voice boomed, reverberating through the room. "You have made a grave mistake. Your arrogance will be your undoing. We are the Galactic Empire. You cannot stand against us. You cannot fight us. Submit, and your world may yet survive. Resist, and you will suffer the consequences." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving a sense of dread hanging in the air. Blake's mind raced. The Empire had made its intentions clear. It was no longer a matter of tribute, but a matter of survival. Earth had challenged the most powerful force in the galaxy, and now there was no turning back. In the meeting room of the United Nations, the leaders exchanged uneasy glances. They had sent their warning, but the response was not one of compromise. It was one of force. The Empire wasn't offering any middle ground. "This is what we feared," the Secretary General said, his voice trembling. "They won't listen to us. We're too small, too weak in comparison to them." But there was one voice that cut through the panic. It was President Elena Garcia, who had been silent up until now. She stood up slowly, her face hardening with resolve. "We may be small, but we are not weak. The Empire may have their ships, their weapons, and their power, but they do not have our spirit." The room fell silent. President Garcia's words were simple, but they carried weight. The leaders of Earth had been backed into a corner, and the only way forward was to stand united. "We've made our warning," Garcia continued, her voice steady, "and we will not back down. We are humans. We have fought wars before, and we have won. We won't be bullied by an empire. It's time we show them just how dangerous we can be." Her words struck a chord with the leaders. There was no turning back now. The fate of Earth rested on the next few moves, and they knew the stakes had never been higher. The world was about to change forever, and humanity would either rise to the occasion or be crushed under the weight of the Empire's power. Back at the Earth Defense Command, Admiral Blake sat in her chair, staring at the fleet of ships above, her hands clenched into fists. The message had been sent. The Empire had responded. And now it was time to prepare for the next step. In the silence that followed the transmission, Blake heard something, a sound that had been there all along but had been drowned out by the chaos. It was the sound of humanity's resolve. It was a sound that could not be ignored. She stood up, her back straight and her face grim. "Prepare the fleet," she said, her voice calm but firm. "We're not submitting. We'll face the consequences, but we'll face them as a united Earth." As she walked toward the war room, her mind was clear. The first warning had been heard, but the fight was just beginning. And this time, Earth would be ready, preparing for the worst. The harsh truth was sinking in. Earth had made its stand, and the Galactic Empire had responded with chilling force. The massive fleet loomed just beyond Earth's orbit, silent but ever-present. The terrifying truth now echoed through every news broadcast and military channel. The Empire wasn't here to negotiate. The warning had been made, but what came next was far beyond anything humanity had ever faced. In the Earth Defense Command, Admiral Blake paced back and forth in front of a vast war room filled with officers and strategists. The tension in the room was palpable. Everyone understood the gravity of the situation. No one spoke. The weight of the impending conflict was enough to silence even the bravest. Blake stopped in front of a large map of Earth's defenses, tracing her fingers across the lines of military fortifications. Earth's fleet was small in comparison to the Empire's enormous warships, but humanity had something that could level the playing field: a secret weapon. A weapon they had been developing in secret for years, hoping they would never have to use it. "Admiral," one of the officers called out, breaking the silence. "The Empire is waiting. They're not moving forward yet, but they're not retreating either. What do we do now?" Blake took a deep breath. She knew the answer wasn't simple. The ships in the Empire's fleet were beyond anything Earth had ever seen. But the humans had one advantage the Empire didn't. They had been underestimated. The Galactic Empire had believed Earth to be a primitive, insignificant world. Now that arrogance was about to be their downfall. "We prepare for the worst," Blake said, her voice steady and commanding. "This isn't just about defending Earth anymore. It's about showing the galaxy what humanity is capable of." She turned to face the officers, all eyes on her. "Gather the fleet. We need to deploy everything we have. No matter what, we will fight. We will show the Empire that Earth will never kneel." As she spoke, the officers immediately got to work, coordinating various tasks and ensuring that every asset Earth had was on standby. Fighter jets, defense satellites, missile systems, and ground troops. Everything was being put into motion. Even the secret weapon, known only to a select few, was ready for deployment. This was no longer a simple defense. It was Earth's last stand. Meanwhile, across the globe, people were watching in silence, waiting for the storm to break. News outlets had been broadcasting the crisis nonstop. They had seen the Empire's ships hanging ominously above Earth, their sheer size making it clear that Earth was nothing more than a dot in the grand scale of the galaxy. Yet in the midst of this fear and uncertainty, a strange sense of resolve began to form among the people of Earth. On every continent, from the bustling streets of New York City to the quiet hills of rural Africa, humans found a renewed sense of strength. The world had been divided by politics, by ideologies, and by borders for centuries. But now, They were united by something much greater than themselves: humanity's survival. President Garcia, sitting in a secure command center, was receiving updates from Blake and the Earth Defense Command. Her face was tense, but there was a fire in her eyes that none of her advisors had ever seen before. She had stood through countless crises during her tenure, but this was different. This was not just a political battle. This was a battle for the future of humankind. "Keep pushing forward," President Garcia instructed, her voice unwavering. "We must show them that Earth is not a planet to be conquered." Her words echoed through the halls of every government building on Earth. The message was clear: no matter the cost, Earth would not go down without a fight. As the preparations continued, Blake stood outside the war room, her thoughts heavy. She had seen what the Empire was capable of. Their ships were armed with weapons so advanced that Earth's defenses were little more than toys in comparison. The only hope they had was to fight smarter, to use their ingenuity, and to push every human resource to the limit. In the quiet of the command center, Blake's voice cut through the air. "We're ready," she said. "But the question is, are they?" With the fleet gathered, the weapon systems online, and humanity's united front prepared, Earth's next move was clear. They were going to show the Empire that this planet may have been underestimated, but it would not fall without a fight. The moment of truth had arrived. The Empire had made its first move, and now Earth would respond. The unexpected move. The tension was thick, almost suffocating, as the countdown to conflict continued. Earth's fleet was assembled, every ship brimming with firepower and determination. The military commanders and top strategists held their breath, waiting for the Galactic Empire to make its next move. All eyes were on the sky as the Empire's massive warships hung ominously over the planet. It seemed as if the final battle was inevitable. Admiral Blake stood before a vast screen in the command center, her gaze fixed on the blinking red dots representing the Empire's fleet. Her fingers drummed steadily on the table, the sound punctuating the silence. The atmosphere was tense, but the message was clear: Earth was prepared to defend itself, no matter the cost. "Status report," Blake ordered, her voice cold but steady. "All Earth forces are in position, Admiral," a technician replied. "The fleet is ready, and the secret weapon is operational. We are waiting for their next move." Blake nodded, the weight of responsibility heavy on her shoulders. They had done everything they could to prepare for this moment, but something felt off. Why had the Empire not made its move yet? Why had they not launched their assault? Then, without warning, a new signal came through. A loud, sharp beep echoed through the command center, breaking the tension. Everyone turned to the screen in disbelief. "It's a transmission," the technician said, "from the Empire." Blake's eyes narrowed. This wasn't expected. The Empire had not communicated with Earth since their initial warning. Why would they now? Were they preparing to negotiate? Or was this some form of trickery, a new form of psychological warfare? The screen flickered and then stabilized, displaying a transmission from a figure shrouded in darkness. The voice that followed was deep, commanding, and cold. "Earth," the voice began, sending a chill through everyone in the room. "We have heard your warning. We understand your defiance. But you will never be prepared for what comes next. The Galactic Empire does not bow to threats." Blake's hand clenched into a fist. The arrogance of the Empire was evident in every word. They had underestimated humanity before, and they were making the same mistake again. The figure on the screen continued. "You have no idea what you're up against. We have the power to wipe out entire systems, to erase civilizations from existence, and yet you threaten us with primitive weapons. The punishment for your insolence will be severe." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. The room was filled with stunned officers, all processing the weight of the Empire's words. Blake stood motionless, her expression unchanging. "They just made a grave mistake," Blake murmured under her breath. The technician quickly input commands, trying to trace the transmission source. "Admiral, it's coming from their flagship, but there's something strange about it." "What do you mean, strange?" Blake asked, turning sharply toward the technician. "I'm not sure. The signal isn't just a warning. It's like a challenge. They're testing us, trying to provoke us into making a move," the technician replied. Blake paused for a moment, considering the implications. The Empire had clearly underestimated Earth's resolve, but now they were daring humanity to act, to show them what Earth was truly capable of. "Do they think we'll back down?" Blake said, her voice growing stronger. "They've misjudged us." Earth had done everything in its power to prepare for this conflict, but the Empire's arrogance had given them a window to turn the tables. Blake knew the next step was critical. The Empire might be powerful, but they had underestimated the one thing that could change the tide of the battle: human ingenuity. "Prepare to launch the counteroffensive," Blake commanded, her voice sharp with authority. "We will show them what happens when they push Earth too far." The unexpected weapon. Admiral Blake stood at the center of the command room, eyes fixed on the giant screen before her. The lights flickered as the power surged, a reminder of the fragile line they were walking. The Galactic Empire had thrown down the gauntlet, and Earth had no choice but to pick it up. But Blake knew something the Empire didn't. Earth wasn't going into battle with just ships and soldiers. They had a secret, a weapon so powerful, so unexpected, that it could shift the entire war in their favor. But it wasn't something that could be used lightly. Blake had held back the knowledge of this weapon until now, knowing that the right moment would come when they could strike with it, and when the enemy would never see it coming. The atmosphere in the command room was tense. The fleet had taken their positions, their weapons ready for what was to come. But Blake knew the battle ahead wouldn't be won with just firepower. It would be won by strategy, and the unexpected weapon Earth had was the key to victory. "Admiral, the fleet is ready for your orders," came the voice of Captain Morales, her trusted officer. "The Empire's ships are within firing range." Blake didn't respond immediately. She was thinking, watching the blinking dots on the screen. It was almost as if the calm before the storm had given her time to reflect on everything that had led to this moment. The Empire, once so sure of their superiority, now found themselves facing a planet they had underestimated, a planet with a hidden strength they couldn't possibly comprehend. "We wait," Blake said, her voice steady. "We don't attack yet." The crew looked at one another, puzzled. They were ready. The enemy was there. Why hold back? "Admiral," Morales questioned, confusion in her voice. "We could strike now. It's our chance." Blake turned to face her. "We wait for the signal. The Empire won't know what hit them." The crew exchanged uncertain glances, but they trusted Blake's judgment. She had never steered them wrong before. Meanwhile, the Galactic Empire's fleet continued to advance. Their ships were colossal, dwarfing anything Earth had ever built. Their weapons were powerful, their defenses seemingly impenetrable. It was the kind of power that made entire planets tremble. The Empire had ruled for eons, never facing a challenge quite like this. As the ships neared Earth's atmosphere, Blake stood silently, her eyes narrowing. The time for waiting was almost over. She gave one final glance at the screen, watching the countdown to impact. Then she turned sharply to Captain Morales. "Now." With that single word, the room erupted into action. Captain Morales activated the command, and a deep hum filled the room as the ship's power systems surged. In the space above Earth, hidden from the eyes of the Empire, a massive, unassuming satellite suddenly came to life. It had been there for years, unnoticed by anyone but a select few. Its purpose had been kept secret, until now. A massive energy beam, one unlike anything the Empire had ever seen, surged from the satellite. It was unlike a traditional weapon. It wasn't a laser or a projectile. It was an energy wave that could scramble enemy ship systems, disrupt shields, and disable weaponry with a single strike. The weapon was designed not to destroy, but to cripple, to leave the enemy vulnerable. As the energy beam shot toward the enemy fleet, Admiral Blake watched intently. She knew this was their moment. The Empire had underestimated humanity's resilience and ingenuity. What they didn't know was that Earth's greatest weapon was not in its ships, not in its soldiers, but in its ability to surprise. The energy wave struck the nearest of the Empire's warships, and immediately the ship's systems began to flicker and fail. Shields dropped. Weapons went offline. The flagship, once a symbol of invincibility, now struggled to maintain control. Direct hit. One of the officers shouted. The Empire's flagship is disabled. The command room erupted into cheers. It was a huge victory. The Empire's arrogance had blinded them to the capabilities of the Earth forces, and now they were paying the price. But Admiral Blake didn't allow herself a moment of relief. She knew the Empire wouldn't go down without a fight. This was just the beginning. Don't get complacent, she warned her crew, her voice cold with determination. We've only just started. The real battle is about to begin. As Blake spoke, another pulse of energy shot out from Earth's hidden weapon, hitting another of the Empire's ships. The Empire was reeling, their once dominant fleet now vulnerable and on the defensive. They had underestimated humanity, and that mistake would cost them dearly. Admiral Blake turned back to the screen. The Empire's forces were still massive, but for the first time, they were the ones in trouble. The balance of power had shifted, and Earth was now in control. The war had only just begun, but the Galactic Empire was already feeling the consequences of their mistake. The Empire strikes back. The command room was silent, save for the constant hum of the ship's engines and the faint beeping of monitors. Despite their recent success, Admiral Blake knew the war was far from over. The energy weapon had been a shock to the Empire, but it was only a temporary advantage. The enemy fleet, massive and highly advanced, would not sit idly by while their power was challenged. "We hit them hard," Captain Morales said, glancing at the now dimmed screen showing the disabled ships. "But we can't relax. They'll retaliate." Admiral Blake nodded. "They will, and when they do, we need to be ready." The situation was dire. Despite the setback, the Empire's remaining fleet still outnumbered Earth's ships by a significant margin. Blake knew they couldn't afford another misstep. If Earth's forces were to survive, they would have to be clever. This wasn't just about brute force. It was about outwitting an enemy that had far more resources. "Prepare the fleet for evasive maneuvers," Blake ordered. "I don't care if they think we're weak. We can't let them regroup." The crew quickly sprang into action, communicating with the fleet stationed around Earth. Their tactics needed to be precise. There would be no second chances. Blake wasn't sure if the Empire fully understood the scope of what Earth was capable of, but one thing was clear. They were now aware that humanity wasn't going down without a fight. Above Earth's skies, the Empire's fleet began to regroup. The loss of a flagship was a massive blow to their pride, but the Empire was not quick to admit defeat. Their ships were powerful, their weapons deadly, and their leadership ruthless. They had dominated the galaxy for centuries, and they would not let a small planet like Earth stand in their way. Suddenly, the alert systems in the command room blared to life, piercing the quiet. The crew quickly scanned the screens, and their faces turned pale. "They're coming in fast," an officer called out. "They're sending the full fleet." Blake's heart sank. The full might of the Empire, every ship, every weapon, was heading directly for Earth. If they couldn't outmaneuver them now, it would all be over. "Activate the countermeasures," Blake ordered, her voice steady despite the rising tension. "We can't let them get close." As Earth's ships scattered in all directions, the once proud Empire fleet adjusted its trajectory, intent on cornering them. The battle was about to escalate into something far more intense than anything humanity had faced before. The Empire's full strength was now focused on Earth, and it was clear they intended to crush it once and for all. Blake watched the battle unfold before her. It was chaos, a storm of laser fire, and explosions in the distance as the two forces collided. Earth's ships were fast and agile, weaving between asteroid fields and planetary debris. But the Empire's vessels were powerful, with thick shields and devastating weapons. "They're closing in," Captain Morales reported, his voice tinged with worry. "We need a way to break through their defenses." Blake clenched her fists. She had a plan, an idea that might just turn the tide, but it required incredible precision and a willingness to take risks. "Prepare the secondary weapon," Blake said, her eyes narrowing as she watched the screen. "The one we've been holding back." There was a brief silence as the crew processed the order. The secondary weapon had been developed as a last resort. If the Empire was going to attack with everything they had, then Earth had no choice but to counter with everything they had in return. "The secondary weapon?" Morales asked, his tone incredulous. "But it's untested. It could destroy the entire fleet, including ours." Blake turned to him, her expression unyielding. "If we don't try, we'll lose everything. We have to trust the technology." Morales hesitated but nodded. "Understood." The secondary weapon was a massive energy disruptor, capable of sending out a wave of energy that could disable entire fleets. It was designed to weaken enemy shields, allowing Earth's ships to penetrate their defenses. But its power was unpredictable, and there was a risk it could harm both sides if it wasn't calibrated correctly. With a quick press of a button, Blake authorized the activation. The room fell into a tense silence as the weapon powered up. "Firing in 3, 2, 1. The countdown echoed. A blinding pulse of light shot out from Earth's fleet, surging toward the approaching Empire ships. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Then, the pulse collided with the Empire's shields. The shockwave spread across the battlefield, sending ripples of energy through the entire fleet. Earth's ships were rocked by the force, but their shields held strong. The Empire, however, was not so fortunate. Their ships' shields flickered and failed, leaving them vulnerable to attack. Blake watched with bated breath as Earth's ships surged forward, capitalizing on the Empire's weakened defenses. The tide was turning. Earth was no longer the underdog. It was now in control. But Blake knew the Empire wouldn't give up easily. The war was far from over, and the real battle had just begun. The Empire would retaliate. They always did. But for now, humanity had a chance, an opening to win. As the last of the enemy ships fell into retreat, Blake allowed herself a brief moment of relief. But only a moment. The Galactic Empire was still out there, still a threat, and Earth's fight was far from finished. The final stand. The battle had raged for hours, and Earth's fleet was battered but still holding strong. The Empire had retreated temporarily, but everyone knew this wasn't the end. Earth had shown them that they were not to be underestimated, but the Galactic Empire was a relentless force. They would return with a vengeance. Admiral Blake stood in the command center, her eyes fixed on the star maps that filled the walls. The Empire was regathering its strength. It wouldn't be long before they launched their final attack, this time with all their might. Earth had one last chance to win, but the odds were stacked against them. "We've caused them damage, but they'll come back," Captain Morales said, his face grim. "What's our next move?" Blake turned to face her crew, her gaze steely. "We've got one chance, and we need to make it count. This isn't just about survival anymore. It's about sending a message. Humanity will not bow to the Empire." The crew nodded in agreement. They had all come to understand the importance of what was at stake, not just for Earth, but for every world the Empire had ever conquered. If humanity could defeat the Empire, it would change the course of the galaxy forever. Blake's mind raced. The secondary weapon had been a success, but it was only a temporary solution. The Empire would adapt, and they would eventually find a way to counter it. Humanity needed something more, something that could turn the tide once and for all. She turned to the lead engineer, a woman named Dr. Hannah Kwan. "Doctor, Is the prototype ready? Dr. Kwan's face was pale, and there was an edge of uncertainty in her voice. It's not perfect, but it's our best shot. The new weapon could destabilize the Empire's entire fleet if we can get it within range. It'll disrupt their communication systems and their control over their ships. Blake nodded, her mind calculating the risks. We need to get close. Once we fire it, the Empire will retaliate, and we won't have much time. Captain Morales stepped forward. Admiral, you can't risk it. If this weapon fails, we'll lose everything. Blake met his gaze. We've already lost everything once before. We can't let that happen again. She turned back to Dr. Kwan. Prepare the prototype. We don't have much time. As the crew scrambled to make final preparations, Blake took a moment to look out of the window, watching the Earth's surface slowly rotate beneath her. The planet had always been a symbol of hope and resilience, but now it was the battleground of the greatest war the galaxy had ever seen. The enemy was out there, waiting. Blake could feel the tension in her chest, the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. She was the one who had rallied the forces of Earth, the one who had made the decision to fight back. And now it was all coming down to this moment. The Empire's fleet reappeared on the horizon, massive ships cutting through the stars with relentless speed. Blake's heart pounded in her chest as she took her place at the helm. All hands, prepare for battle, she ordered. This is it. We either win today, or we lose everything. The fleet of Earth's ships moved into position, forming a tight defensive line. At the front of the formation, the prototype weapon hummed with energy, ready to be unleashed. Blake's mind raced as she counted down the seconds. Every move had to be perfect. One mistake could cost them everything. The Empire's fleet loomed closer. Blake felt the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. She could almost hear the hum of their weapons charging, the anticipation building on both sides. Admiral, they're locking onto us, Captain Morales reported, his voice tense. Hold your position, Blake ordered, her voice steady despite the storm brewing around them. We wait for the right moment. As the enemy fleet moved into range, Blake's heart raced. This was the moment that would decide everything. She gave the order. Fire the prototype. The weapon discharged with a flash of blinding light, sending a shockwave of energy across the battlefield. The blast hit the Empire's fleet with precision, and within moments, their ships began to flicker and stall, their communication systems failing, and their weapons going offline. For a brief moment, the Empire's fleet was in chaos. Their ships, once powerful and organized, were now floundering, unable to coordinate their attacks. The tables had turned, but the victory was not yet assured. The Empire's retaliation came swiftly. Massive energy blasts fired from the remaining ships, ripping through the void of space toward Earth's fleet. Brace for impact, Blake shouted, gripping the controls as the blasts began to hit. The crew scrambled to reinforce shields, but the power of the Empire's weapons was overwhelming. One by one, Earth's ships began to fall, their shields buckling under the intense fire. Admiral, we're losing ships, Captain Morales yelled. Blake's mind raced. They had done it. They had disrupted the Empire's fleet. But at what cost? Earth's forces were dwindling, and the Empire's counterattack was fierce. The war was far from over, and the final stand was yet to come. In that moment, Blake made a decision. It was no longer just about defeating the Empire. It was about ensuring humanity's future. She wasn't going to let the Empire destroy everything they had fought for. Prepare for a last-ditch assault, Blake said, her voice low and determined. We may have to sacrifice it all, but we'll go down fighting. The final battle was about to begin, and Blake knew that whatever happened next, humanity would not surrender. Not now. Not ever.